present. If I could ask CAO Morris to let us know who from staff is here.
Certainly, Madam Chair. We have with us Julia Crowder, our Manager of Economic Development, Art Manhire, our Director of Community Services, Paul McMunn, our Director of Public Works and Utilities, and the ever-present Nadine Bennett, our Acting Clerk.
Thank you. I'll begin this evening with the land acknowledgement. Today, on Monday, June 20th, we acknowledge that this sacred land on which Smiths Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We are also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smiths Falls. We are mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, being mindful of generations to come. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Seeing none, any disclosure of monetary interest? Again, seeing none. There are no delegations this evening and no adoption of minutes. And CAO Morris, if you could tee up any reports that you have.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Because this is a special meeting, we'll defer any verbal director's reports to next week.
Thank you. There are no correspondence items and no in-camera issues. So the first priority issue we'll be dealing with tonight is the delegated authority for temporary parking provisions. If everybody could turn their mics off unless they're speaking. And that is with our Director of Public Works, Paul McMunn.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, members of council. So if council recall, a week or two ago, we Public Works brought a very similar report to committee for consideration to delegate authority for traffic provisions throughout town to give some, to make operational matters a little easier around town. And this report speaks to the parking bylaw that we currently have, and we're looking to delegate authority to the Director of Public Works and Utilities to invoke temporary changes, primarily due to construction and operational activities that are taking place throughout town, where there are occasions where due to those works, we do have to alter, move, add parking or adjust parking for certain things like Beckwith Street construction. Why I bring Beckwith Street construction is this report does reference we do have interest at this point to add a couple of additional parking stalls on Church Street just before you get to Beckwith, right outside the temporary main hall reception entrance. There is space there, and you'll see in the report I quickly grabbed a Google snapshot and painted some very not very straight red lines on there, just to illustrate to council what we're looking at doing. So within those two spaces, we would incorporate an accessible space plus just a regular space as well. So there is room there to do so. And, in the absence of having provisions in the bylaw to delegate this type of authority to make those quick minor changes for short periods of time, this would have to come back to council every time we wanted to do something of this fashion. And this just speaks to, I guess maybe modernizing some of our bylaws to afford staff and not burden council every time we need to make these minor changes with something like this. I believe my personal feeling is that this is well within staff's purview to make those types of changes. So with that, I'd be happy through the chair to take any questions.
And are there any questions or concerns with delegating authority for parking as well as? This was an easy one. Thank you, Director McMunn. We agree that this authority should be delegated to you. The next one is 8.2, LeBoat docking agreement, and that is with Manager Crowder.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. The report before you provides an update to council with respect to the ongoing negotiations between staff and LeBoat to facilitate and support the expansion of their fleet in Smith Falls through the purchase of new docks, and to seek direction from council to complete these negotiations and develop a new docking agreement that will achieve cost recovery for the initial purchase and installation of the docks. So just a few points. LeBoat this year celebrated their 5-year anniversary. When LeBoat opened in 2017, their fleet consisted of 16 boats with plans to expand the fleet throughout the 5 years of operation. At that time, the town purchased docks to facilitate the mooring of LeBoat's fleet and executed an exclusive use docking agreement, which is set to expire this year on October 31st. Currently, LeBoat has 24 boats, with 6 more to be delivered this year and another 4 to arrive in 2023. Additional docks are needed to moor the expanded fleet in Victoria Basin. We've reached out to the vendor who installed the current docks and have been given an estimated cost of $180,000 for the construction and installation of new docks. As part of discussions with LeBoat, staff have negotiated the option of transient boat access to the docks where space is available and provide increased capacity and essentially revenues for mooring of private vessels in Victoria Basin. Staff has also submitted a grant application through the Tourism Relief Fund in an effort to offset initial costs. The grant could fund up to 100% of the project. However, approvals are not expected to be announced until later this year, being November or December. Depending on the success of the grant application, the new docking agreement will set out the cost or recovery for all of the portion or some of the portion of the cost. A capital budget request for the cost of the docks would be submitted as part of the 2023 budget process. And in conclusion, the current docking agreement is set to expire this year. Through a new agreement, the town has the opportunities to support LeBoat's expansion, create a mechanism for cost recovery for the new docks, and increase transient boater capacity in Victoria Basin.
Thank you. Are there, and I see Councillor Dwyer first, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Julia, I have a couple questions in what it is you're actually looking for from us right now. Are you looking for pre-budget approval for the $180,000 for next year? Is that the financial request?
Currently, we're just asking for direction from council to continue and conclude the negotiations with LeBoat to develop the new docking agreement. We won't actually know what the cost will be until later in the year.
Okay, so I guess in reading this report, it just feels a little premature to direct a conclusion of the cost negotiation beyond anything more or less in principle, which it sounds like you guys have already been doing. So I don't know that I'm comfortable agreeing to a conclusion to the negotiation in a meaningful way until we know what the cost is. And I appreciate that the cost isn't going to be known until later this year. But I don't think I have enough information about, what the payback is going to be on the cost recovery, or what the final cost is, or, how long is our leasing term going to be with LeBoat this term. I don't have any comfort level in proceeding with this beyond the extent that you guys have already proceeded operationally to engage LeBoat in discussions and kind of generally set up terms for this. I'll be honest, I don't understand why this is in front of us.
Any other comments, or did you wish to speak to that, Ms. Crowder?
Sure, through you, Madam Chair. So the intention of the docking agreement would be to recover all costs related to the construction and installation of the new docks. What we don't know is the actual cost, because there's still some parameters that we need to work out in terms of the actual docks and what will be needed, as well as what the grant may provide us. So if we get 100% of the grant, then there is no cost recovery. If we only get 50%, then we'd be looking to recover 50% of the cost, the initial cost. 100% of the 100% of the 50% that wasn't covered by the grant.
And I saw Councillor McGuire and then Councillor Brennan.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, I share all of Councilor Dwyer's concerns, but I'm just wondering, what does full cost recovery mean? Because to me, if we're applying for a grant on behalf of LeBoat, or if it's going to be used primarily for LeBoat, I'd want that staff time included in the cost recovery. I'd want the time of bringing these things in and out, the storage over the winter, full scope, and I just like a better idea of what we're negotiating for as part of cost recovery in this report.
I'll let CEO Morris take that.
Yeah, through the chair. So really good questions. And I think to answer the original question, what we're looking for, and it's in the recommendation, we're seeking agreement in principle so that we can continue the negotiations. So LeBoat came to us and they said, hey, we love the Rideau. We believe there's room to expand. Can you accommodate our expansion? And we said, yes, we believe we can. So we started discussions around what that might look like. And of course, Parks Canada was involved in those discussions. So we agreed, or at least we discussed in principle, that a 5-year lease with a full cost recovery over a 5-year term is what would be suitable for them. That's likely what we will pursue. So we're not at the point where we've incorporated all the costs. We've captured the large costs, the purchase and installation, but Councillor McGuire raises a really good point. There are ongoing costs that we'll need to capture. So we'll certainly do that as part of the negotiations and bring back to this committee a draft lease agreement. But there's little point in us proceeding with that conversation unless we know that council supports it in principle.
Thanks, CEO Morris. I think so for me tonight, I'd be comfortable with the second part of the recommendation if we substitute the word continue with conclude, so that staff be directed to continue negotiations with LeBoat to develop a new docking agreement with lease terms that achieve full cost recovery for the construction and installation. And then we can trust that this will come back to us as those negotiations continue.
Thank you. And Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, I agree. I see $180,000 mentioned here. One question I have, and I know I remember when the other docs went in, there was wide support, not only from the province, but from neighboring municipalities. And the end result is the docks that were put in were for the exclusive use of LeBoat. However, the ownership of those docks remain with the town. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So would that be the case in this particular instance?
Yes, it would. The town would retain ownership.
Ownership of the docks. I see that they're with. I just got a couple more, Madam Chair. The additional boats are currently moored on the wall there and without the docks. So it's being utilized now. I know that Parks Canada has facilitated hydro and the infrastructure needed for the additional boats. So I would agree with my colleagues. You know, in the to conclude negotiations would be, I would be interested to see a draft agreement, and then we can go from there. But yes, I support the vote 120%. So I think this, it doesn't cost the taxpayers anything, and we own the docks, and the boat utilizes our basin and brings tourism to town. So yes.
Thank you. Director McMunn, could I ask you to turn your camera off, and then I'll be able to see all of council. This drives Councillor McGuire crazy, but then I'll be able to see everybody at the same time. Councillor McKenna, did you have your hand up? And then Councillor Allen, and then Mayor Panko.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And through you to Ms. Crowder, could you mention there's a passage where you talk about transient boaters coming through being able to use the docks, and understand that may not be the case for the current agreement, but the new agreement, will that apply to the new docks or all of the docks that the boat will have an agreement on?
Yeah, the intention would to expand it as for all of the docks. The current agreement is an exclusive use for LaBoat, so transient boaters are not able to utilize that. So the new docking agreement would include the current docks as well as the new docks as well. So we know that especially in the high season, LaBoat boats are out, and that would increase our capacity to moor and generate revenue from transient boaters in the basin.
Thank you. So all of our boating tourists would benefit from this for sure. Thank you.
Councillor Allen?
Yes, I certainly agree with this in principle and look forward to having more docks in the future. And I really was going to ask the same question as Councillor McKenna, but you answered it, and I'm glad to see the boats, other boats being able to use that. And so I'm also glad that we put it into all of the dockage. And I guess my only question that I have for CAO Morris is, are we running out of the other kind of dockage? You know, like I'm a family, I want to go fishing, but I want to come into Smiths Falls and see the sights and then go back out and go up to the Rideau and go back to my cottage. Where am I going to at some point not be able to park or dock? I should say, not park, dock.
Yeah, through the chair, that's a really good question, and that was really the genesis of pursuing shared use of dockage. You know, the basin is filling. That's great. It's a superb problem to have. But we just felt that with the docks, instead of boats parking parallel to the concrete wall, which takes up a lot of space, with the proper docks, they could dock what's called stern to and take up less space. So we're really expanding capacity without expanding the perimeter of the basin. So I think with this change, we're going to add capacity that will last for years. But I'd love to bring back a problem that we don't have enough then, and we have to find solutions. But this will certainly buy us more capacity in the short term.
Thank you.
And Mayor Panko?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what's been said so far. I think we've benefited considerably with having a boat in our community. There are 30 boats now, going to 34, and maybe more after that, who knows for sure. But the fact that this would be a capital outlay by the town that would be repaid over 5 years and through via at least with LaBoat, based on the premise that these docks will be available, and the existing docks and future docks we would construct would be available for transient boaters as well. I think it's really a win-win. And in the end, the docks that we have now, the docks that will be constructed if we move ahead, probably have a 15 to 20 year lifespan, potentially longer, I guess, if they're properly maintained. So we've got an asset that will serve our community potentially for decades. And whether part of that or all that's covered by grant, I guess regardless, there's still a full cost recovery through the lease arrangement with LaBoat. So I'm supportive of the recommendation, but I'm also understanding if there's any reluctance among council committee to maybe make a modification to it. But I think we've got a good path forward.
Thank you. And Councillor, back to Councillor Dwyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So at the end of this discussion, I agree with Councillor McGuire. I'd like to see the motion modified to drop off the first part about the agreement in principle to purchase and just allow staff to continue their negotiations with LaBoat and then circle back to us with an updated leasing agreement, at which point we can make the decision about whether or not we're proceeding.
Okay, I just want to go back to what Councillor McGuire said, and that was that he would find it acceptable to conclude to continue negotiations. Okay, I don't think we were taking out the approve in principle. I don't think that was his suggestion. Councillor McGuire and then CAO Morris.
Thanks. Yeah, my suggestion is to remove the first two lines and just keep the second two lines, that staff be directed to continue negotiations.
Okay, and CAO Morris?
Yeah, just like to add that, you know, LaBoat are looking at other options on the Rideau for the expanded fleet. So the reason we we put in the in principle pieces to show commitment that we're serious about having their fleet here in Smiths Falls. As well, it may be a different council that considers this, depending on the timing. So the in principle just gives LeBoat some confidence that the town of Smiths Falls is supportive, subject to a successful negotiation, of course, but it would inspire confidence that we want them here in Smiths Falls. So I would encourage committee to consider the in principle component.
Thank you. I'm going to take a moment to throw my 2 cents in here. I am supportive in principle of the purchase of additional dockage, and I could live with changing conclude to continue negotiations, keeping the first sentence there in as well. That was going to be my one suggestion to begin with, is to change it to continue on the second part of that recommendation. But then I think I saw Mayor Panko.
Thank you. I mean, in this instance, I think by adding our support or approval in principle doesn't bind council or this council or future council of the corporation. Ultimately, it'll be a budget decision by the next council to make that investment. But I'm fine with the way it's worded. And again, I think there's still decisions to be made after tonight's decision before these docks would ever be funded and built.
Okay, so I'm going to try now, after listening to anybody, if I'm going to take a bit of a straw vote that the current recommendation stay as is, except to change continue to conclude to continue. So give me a show of hands that could. So Mayor Panko, Councillor Brennan, Councillor Allen, Councillor McKenna, and myself could live with that one change to the recommendation. So that would move forward then, if that's five of 7. Okay. Thank you, Manager Crowder. The last piece of business tonight, 3, Rideau Community Health Services expression of interest, and that is with C.O. Morris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this evening, we'll take you back to early January when Michelle Bellows from Rideau Community Health Services came in front of committee and presented their vision for a new integrated health hub in the town of Smiths Falls. And her request that evening covered a couple of things, the most important of which was support from council for the town to continue negotiations, or discussions rather, with Rideau community on a potential location. So subsequent to that meeting, we've had a number of discussions and determined that their requirement is a piece of property roughly 2 acres in size. As I'm sure you can appreciate, there aren't too many of those left in the town of Smiths Falls. So we looked at different town-owned properties, and the one that rose to the top was or is the property at Highland Corbett Park. So we identified that as a potential location for the building. And since then, Rideau Community has been successful in securing a planning grant from the Ministry of Health. That's really their next step to continue the site selection process and a design of the facility. So that's where we are at this point. The request from Rideau Community was for the town to donate the land to facilitate this development. And so that's what we're bringing forward this evening. So earlier this month, Rideau Community issued an expression of interest. So they're going out to the market to see who would be able to supply either land and a building. They are open to an existing building, a retrofit. So that expression of interest is out there. It closes on the 30th of June. So we're bringing this forward this evening to see if there's support to participate in the expression of interest for this particular piece of property. So Highland Corbett Park, and I should say there's still the jury's still out about which one is Highland and which one is Corbett, but for the purposes of this discussion, the park area west of Sussex, we would consider to be Highland, and the park area to the east of Sussex we'll call Corbett for the purposes of this discussion. The entire site is about 2.7 acres. It's a large open space. There are 2 baseball fields and diamonds and fields there. There's a decommissioned wading pool. And what we've discovered is that usage in these park areas has diminished over time, and maybe a reflection of the popularity of baseball, and certainly with the decommissioned wading pool, it doesn't really offer a viable service. So this has been identified in the draft Parks and Recreation Master Plan that it is an underutilized municipal resource, and they're recommending that it be looked at for reprogramming and to redefine the park. So with that said, we've looked at other elements to such a decision. The official plan obviously is an important one. The area is designated as open space. Typically, a municipality would not transfer ownership of parkland unless there was something valuable in terms of a recreational component to it. And in this case, Rideau Community Health Services are very much open and supportive of some form of indoor recreational element to the building. We haven't defined what that might look like at this point, but they would consider recreation facility to be part of the whole health approach that Rideau Community Health Services promotes. So that's an important consideration from a policy point of view. I mentioned the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. It also notes, and I think it's worthy of commenting, that the town of Smith Falls has a slightly above average amount of parkland open space per capita than many municipalities. Much of it is acknowledged that it's centered around Parks Canada lands or the canal. But this is a good example of a very large open space in a residential neighborhood. They also noted that there appears to be demand through their work for indoor recreational amenities of some type. The third consideration is municipal infrastructure. So the park areas are bounded basically by Chambers and Empress, Elgin Street, and Sussex. That area has not seen infrastructure renewal for some time. In fact, Sussex Street, the 2-block section, had underground infrastructure installed in 1950, so it is quite aged and due for replacement. Chambers Street, reasonably good surface to the street, and the underground utilities are in reasonably good condition. So the notion of combining a potential new build with some form of renewal of infrastructure is probably a good investment given the age of the existing infrastructure. So with that said, there is a drawing attached to the staff report, and I'd like to point out a couple of things. So Rideau Community Health Services had engaged an architect to come up with conceptual site plans. There are 3 of them. All of them consider the building and parking on the Highland section west of Sussex. They just configured each one a little bit differently to provide some options. The one we provided is arguably the preferred one with the building close to the street. But I just want you to be aware there are 2 other potential arrangements on this piece of property. The other thing that's worth noting is the architect drew this in such a way that it would suggest Sussex Street would be a stub and would end. That's open for discussion and through a detailed design process. We certainly wouldn't recommend, if this proceeds, closing Sussex south of Elgin. It's needed to access properties further south. So I just wanted to point that out. The drawing is a concept. This isn't necessarily what it would look like eventually. But it gives you a flavor for the concentration of that integrated health hub west of Sussex, which continues to provide a large open space for outdoor recreation parkland on the east side of Sussex. The drawing also shows the proposed play structure. Committee will remember you recently approved the purchase of a really cool play structure that will go on this property. So we're just working to locate it, but clearly some work needs to be done to optimize that trapezoidal space between Empress and Sussex. It's about 0.9 acres to give you some measure. So with that said, there are a couple of options in the report. One is to proceed and participate in the expression of interest to either donate the land based on the request from the Rideau Community Health Services. The other one is to sell the land and also participate in the EOI. And the third option is to not participate at all. So perhaps, Madam Chair, I'll pause there and answer any questions.
Thank you. And Councillor Brennan first, and then Councillor McKenna.
Thank you. It's exciting. And I'll just put this out here and see how Morris, maybe you could answer this question. The planning grant recently received from the province is not chicken feed. How much is it? Is it $250,000?
I don't know the exact amount, but I do know it exceeds 200,000. I believe it's 240.
Thank you. And that indicates a real support from the upper tier, and the location is fine. The one question I had, and we talk a little bit in the report about the indoor multi-use activity space. That is not set in stone, I would imagine. If we're talking about basketball and pickleball, that's a significant build. And I know that with our Parks and Recreation Master Plan, the consultant had talked about ice use at the youth arena. So that's something, but that's not a decision for tonight, of course. Tonight is solely to participate in this, and my support is for giving this land to Rideau Community Health Services, because when they go forward, and it's not going to happen tomorrow, but when they go forward and with the province is going to look at it and say, you got terrific municipal support, you've got a good location, and let's keep going forward. So I support the recommendation. I just want to make sure that decisions down the road in terms of enhancements, we've committed to the park with playground stuff, but when we talk about an indoor facility, that's another ball of wax, but I know that that's for down the road.
Thank you. Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I support Councillor Brennan's comments as well. And indeed, it is a good indication of community support. I would remind the public watching that Rideau Community Health Services is a not-for-profit registered charity that's been providing services for 50 years to the region. And so this is a pretty sophisticated organization that has been in our community for decades, and they would be a terrific partner on that site. So I too will speak in favor of the recommendations, continue to participate and donate the land. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Panko and then Councillor McGuire.
Thank you. When I look at the possibilities here, I really say, what are we giving up and what are we potentially gaining? And obviously, this is a triangular piece of underutilized town-owned land. And back in the 70s, before Lower Reach Park was developed, this was a busy spot. With Lower Reach Park serving the needs of the community for recreation, this is very underutilized. And when we think of having an integrated health and social services hub here, the opportunity that brings for indoor and cultural assets, as discussed, is something we'll cross that bridge down the road and can be designed down the road. But we live in an environment here where our outdoor life is a little bit more difficult in the wintertime. Having the opportunity for indoor space really builds on a sense of community, not just there, but across the entire town. And then the greater synergies and collaboration between the 8 to 10 like-minded agencies that are committed to the health and wellness of our community, being involved here, and the possibility of reduced occupancy expenses that I hope will lead to more operating dollars put towards frontline services and benefiting our community. Not to mention the tax revenue, this also would be a spinoff of this and helping serve our broader community. And then the measurable return on investment. I mean, dollars invested here have a significant payback in our community over the long run. So I agree with what's been said. I think it can help lead to a healthier, more prosperous community. And support the recommendation, support the suggestion by my two predecessors here, both Councilor Brennan and McKenna, that we would donate the land as well.
Thank you. And Councilor McGuire.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks, CEO Morris. It's really exciting to have this come to council tonight. I think this is the opportunity for transformative change in an underinvested community, and to have something that's going to bring more people into that corner of town and really revitalize that area is going to be amazing for our community. I've got a couple comments on it. I like the idea of closing Sussex Street. And I don't even really see this as a donation of land, because it's an investment of land. We've got not much happening over there right now. It's been underinvested in. We're going to give it to a not-for-profit that's going to be paying taxes on that land. The province is likely to give significant funds to build the facility. The facility is going to have significant recreational component to it. So I see this as a win-win, and I don't see any side of giving anything away or a downside to it. One thing on the site plan is proposed. That corner where Sussex Street goes now, that's wedged in with the train tracks, is dark and full of litter and not well maintained. And I don't know that putting the garden in that back corner is the best location for it. A community garden is a piece of art. They're beautiful. The one at the Heritage House Museum's at the back, but it's a great spot to visit. And since we're starting from scratch at this site, it would be great to put that somewhere in the front or somewhere where it's going to get more visibility. And I think more traffic is going to improve the success of the garden. So that's my feedback on that, but fully supportive of and looking forward to seeing this going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Allen or Councillor Dwyer, do you have any comments? Councillor Allen?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with my colleagues. The only other thing that I would add is we spent a day there as councillors, and the community over there came out and chatted with us. And I heard from almost every family that they really needed somewhere for their children to be safe and to play. And so the fact that this plan has a large proposed play area that will be close to their home, and it's going to be used and really appreciated, is what I think is one of the best features that is included. We had one of the units being used in a similar fashion where healthcare facilities or the healthcare professionals came and worked with the families there. So this is just a better version of that, I think, and I'm really in support of that whole thing. And I know the community will be very happy that we move forward. And I agree with the donation of the land. And as Councillor McGuire said, it is an investment. It's not just a giveaway. So those are my comments, Madam Chair.
Thank you. If Councillor Dwyer does not wish to comment, then maybe I'll take the opportunity. I have all along been supportive of the location of this. I had some reservations about gifting the land, but I think after some information regarding there would be no exemption for property taxes or developmental charges. Again, this will be built during another term, not ours. So I also think it would be important if we have a unanimous decision on moving forward to gift this land as part of the expression of interest. Invest or gift, whichever you choose to use. I hear overwhelming support for this, and I think it could move forward at council tonight. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Brennan. Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, I think that it would be prudent and transparent to not do it tonight and do it at the next council meeting.
I think the suggestion, and maybe I wasn't clear, that we could do first and second tonight and then have a pause of a week before the third reading. It closes June 30th, so there is some timeliness to this. Are you okay with that? Reserving third reading till next meeting?
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any other objections or questions, CAO Morris, so you can proceed with this. That being said, we have completed the business fine time of this committee of the whole, so I will ask that this committee adjourn I need a mover and a seconder, that this committee will adjourn its proceedings at 5:41 and stand so adjourned until the next duly called committee meeting. Moved by Councillor Dwyer, seconded by Councillor Allen. All those in favor? And I think Deputy Clerk Bennett, you'll want to take a few moments between the two meetings. So we'll have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we got everyone here. I've got 7.1 movers and seconders. Nikki, you got item 7.2. Do you have a seconder?
Nope. Jay will do it.
Jay's
Thank
putting
you.
his hand up. Thank you. And Peter,
Mayor Pinko, don't forget those extra ones that we're adding. So I'm just gonna get the Highland Corbett one ready because I didn't have it ready, but the other ones I sent by email. So I'll flip that out to you.
I'll circle back to that. 7.3, that's Peter, you've got that one.
Councillor Alfred.
Okay. And then Chris, you've got 8.1.
Okay, Councillor Allen.
8.2 is Wendy and Jay, and adjournment, Lorraine, your seconder. Lorraine still there? Oh, there she is. Lorraine, your seconder for adjournment?
Councillor McGuire, sorry.
That's okay. I have to flip over my email. Nadine. Okay, Nadine's going to assign 7.4, 8.3, and then
I'm just sending the last resolution. Okay. All right, so we have the addition of bylaw or 7.4. So if we can have we can have Councillor Allen do that one. So that's the bylaw to delegate authority to the Director of Public Works.
Lorraine, your seconder?
And Chris, will you do that one? You're okay with that one? Councillor McGuire?
Okay.
Okay.
And 8.3, the docs?
8.3, the docs, we will have, make sure we will have Councillor McKenna do that one, please.
And seconder?
Councillor Brennan, would you second the docs? Thank you.
And
And the last one, Councillor Alfred, would you do that one? That is the Rideau Community Health Services. And I just sent out the resolution from CAO Morris's report. I just sent that out by email to everyone.
that's, you said Lorraine?
No,
Councillor Alfred.
Oh,
I
Wendy.
would have Councillor McKenna second that one.
Okay. Okay.
And I just wanted to be clear at 8.3, the only word I'm changing from what you've written is directed to continue negotiations.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay,
You know,
so
just
catch me
that's
if I,
that one up, don't worry.
all right.
So
That's-
everybody should have got the emails, hopefully, with those
Yeah, where are we
words.
here? Continue negotiations. Okay,
Okay.
okay. And then I'll have an opportunity for reports if anybody has any reports today. Okay, Lorraine's got her hand up, so there'll be at least some. Okay. Ready to,
I have a little piece of trivia if there's time.
okay,
And I have an inquiry too.
okay, we'll come back to that.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, all right, Mayor Pinko, you may go live then to council now.
welcome
Sorry.
back. Welcome back to this meeting of Smith Falls Town Council from Monday, June 20th. On June 20th, 2022, we acknowledge that the sacred land in which Smith Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and has rich and indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We're also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smith Falls. We're mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, and be mindful of generations to come. I'll call the meeting to order. I have no announcements myself this evening. I'll ask for disclosure of monetary interest. I hear none. We have no delegations. We have no adoption of minutes either. Reports. We've got a report. Councillor Allen, please.
Yes, thank you, Worship. The Friends of the Library members had their annual used book sale on Saturday in Victoria Park. It was a new location, but that was due to the construction around the library. But we had a good day, and I want to thank everyone that donated books and who came to the book sale. We made $1,061.05 for the library. The Friends of the Cat Trail are interested in posting directional signs from the OVRT, which we have found when bikers or hikers are there, if they're new to our town, they don't know where to go to get to the Cat Trail. And there's no signage at all in that area. So we're looking at creating a map that will go on the Cat Trail handouts and brochures, as well as having some signage that will prompt them to go down Kelly Road and then go in around the Railway Museum and easily get to the Cat Trail. The Accessibility Committee had a meeting on June 15th. We reviewed our town of Smith Falls 2021-2025 accessibility plan. Members agreed to go to Murphy Park. We looked at a number of areas in our town that we feel really need to have accessibility added to it. And we thought it would be a good place, especially in the summer, to look at the Murphy Park area. So we're all going down there, taking notes, maybe pictures, and we're going to meet back and talk about what are some of the barriers that we could perhaps overcome and make that a more user-friendly area for people with disabilities. The Railway Museum, as of today, welcomed 2,110 visitors to the museum. Held 2 train ride days, Easter Express and Passport to Summer, with more than 700 people riding the train. Hosted 1 afternoon tea in the dining car with 50 people. We hosted prom photos for more than 300 local residents, and we've had several school groups and private tours. Our Airbnb, our numbers are expected to double for 2022. We have more than 75 bookings throughout the summer at this time, and we're in the process of adding a caboose, the 4th caboose. We've executed more than 25 overnights already in our caboose. We have completely renovated the gift shop, carrying new stock, including becoming an authorized Lionel dealer. We have a member who looks after that, and we're selling a lot of train memorabilia and train sets through that company. And the Municipal Heritage Committee, all members of the Municipal Heritage Committee attended some of the 2022 Ontario Heritage Conference in Brockville. And it was really a useful thing, I think, for the committee to be together, to be able to talk about some of the topics that were presented to us. It was a worthwhile time. And those are my reports. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Alford?
Just a couple of things, your worship. The new downtown Smiths Falls brochures have now been distributed to visitor outlets and where visitors might, and also with the help of Parks Canada, they've also been placed at all 24 lock stations from Kingston to Ottawa, as well as various places around town and in some of our neighboring towns. So that was a piece of business that they were happy to be able to finish. And the other announcement, and not so much an announcement or a report, is that I was one of the master of ceremonies at Paddle Fest last weekend. And I want to congratulate the town team on its second place finish. They were unfortunately overtaken by a young bunch of people from the high school. But it was a great day. The weather was perfect. There was a reasonably good turnout. And I want to certainly acknowledge Peter Au, the Reader Roundtable, and all of the team there that put that on that day. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor McCann, you had your hand up, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. On June 8th, Mayor Panko and I attended the Lanark County Community Services Committee and Corporate Services Committee, and there was a release of the Housing and Homelessness report for the past year from Lanark County. Please go to the website, look up the Housing and Homelessness report. It's absolutely filled with excellent information on the local issue and what's being done to mitigate the impact of affordable housing and homelessness. It's just rich. It's laid out in a very readable, user-friendly way. And if some people get discouraged that there isn't enough being done, we all agree with that, but there is terrific gains being made by Smiths Falls and the county in the area of housing and homelessness. I will say that our mayor, I would say, challenged the committee to consider enhancing the portable housing benefit for next year, and really pressed hard to have them consider that in the fall budget deliberations. On another note, long-term care, as you know, we contribute to the cost of Lanark Lodge, a wonderful organization. Post-pandemic, the provincial government has changed legislation and regulations. It's a much tighter, they never want to see what happened during the pandemic to many frail seniors across Ontario. I think we're blessed to work in a publicly funded long-term care home and to be participating in that. And we were told by the director of Lanark Lodge that the county will indeed meet all the requirements of the new legislation. So most of the time we're halfway there as the county. So I just wanted to reinforce the good work of the staff at Lanark Lodge. And finally, the new childcare agreement that we've been talking about for several months. The county will act as the lead, continue to act as the lead, and there'll be a master agreement that they will have with all of the childcare providers who wish to participate. And I know Smiths Falls is probably in discussions right now with them on the new agreement, which covers bringing affordable daycare down to $10 a day over a period of time, and increasing the wages of many of the childcare providers. The good news, or not, is that all of the childcare providers in Lanark County are already at that minimum or above the minimum new salary cap or salary that the province has insisted on. So our childcare providers are being paid above that rate. So perhaps there's room for that to grow. I don't know. And finally, Councillor Brennan and I had the opportunity to go out to Gemmell's Flowers for their 90th anniversary celebration, 90 years in business. Just a terrific success story and lovely people, great turnout. And it was it's pretty rare you get to go to a 90th birthday for anything, let alone a business. So congratulations to Gemmell's Flowers. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further reports? I've got a couple myself. One on June 8th, the Housing Advisory Committee met. We had an incredible presentation from Robert Eves, the President and CAO of Carebush Community Support, who spoke to some of the challenges that even this organization faced in pulling together the project, which will be happening at 44 Chambers Street, and how the challenges that when you require the support of outside organizations, including the donation from St. John Anglican Church of $500,000 towards this development, as well as the contribution from the county, as well as the funding agreement with the county to support all units, and in pulling it all together to ensure that they could build and will build a sustainable rent guaranteed to income development at 44 Chambers. So it was a great presentation. It's available on YouTube or through the town's website to anyone who's interested in seeing it. But I think it speaks to the challenges of society. Anyone, even not-for-profit, willing to construct rent guaranteed to income housing, they can't do it alone. It's not sustainable without the support of outside organizations, municipalities, and of course, in many cases, the province or federal government. Also wanted to mention Spirit of the Drum Powwow, of course, occurred the weekend before last, and just an incredible outcome. A lot of work by the faculty and students at SFTCI, as well as our own economic development team here at Town Hall, and people from across, I met people from across the country who were there. Just a real incredible event, I think, and certainly immersed ourselves in the culture and the understanding, and we look forward to the same thing, similar thing happening again in future years. And that's it for my reports. We have a few bylaws tonight. The first one will be Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Alfred, that a bylaw to authorize execution of a community improvement plan funding agreement with Julie Bauman, respecting the property municipally owned as 55-59 Beckwith Street North, be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Bennett, seconded by Councillor Alfred, that a bylaw to authorize execution of a community improvement plan funding agreement with Julie Bauman respecting the property municipally owned as municipally known, I think, as 55-59 Beckwith Street North, be received, read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Discussion, Councillor Brennan?
Yes, this was discussed last week's committee of the whole, and this is a community improvement grant for Revive Hair Salon. 50% of the cost for fascia and a property sign that comes out onto the streets, really nice. So it's in the amount of $747, and this is why we have a community improvement plan, so businesses can improve the look of their businesses. So fully support it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? May I have a third reading, please?
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Alfred, that a bylaw to authorize execution of a community improvement plan funding agreement with Julie Bauman respecting the property municipally known as 55-59 Beckwith Street North, be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 103-55-2022.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Alfred, that a bylaw to authorize execution of a community improvement plan funding agreement with Julie Bauman respecting the property municipally known as 55-59 Main Street North, be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10355-2022. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Councillor Dwyer, you have the next bylaw.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Brennan, that a bylaw to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw number 6080-94 respecting lands described municipally as 188 Chambers Street be amended from light industrial special exception 2 in brackets M2-2 to residential type 4 special exception in brackets R4-X withholding provisions be received and read a first time and taken and read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Dwyer, second by Councillor Brennan. The bylaw to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw number 6080-94, respecting lands described municipally as 188 Chambers Street from light industrial special exception 2 in brackets M2-2 to residential type 4 special exception in brackets R4-X withholding provision be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Discussion, Councillor Dwyer?
Thank you. This is an exciting proposal. It's occurring on a vacant lot that's been sitting derelict for many, many years at the end of Chambers Street, right before the overpass or underpass rather of Chambers Street. This is a collaborative project between Miss Blair and Lanark County Housing Authority to offer 5 affordable housing units on the site. The purpose of the holding is to recognize that there is a little bit of background work that still needs to be done before that holding can be lifted. In particular, I believe there's a requirement for a record of site condition to deal with contamination issues associated with the brownfield, as well as I believe they still have to execute their site plan. So in principle, this will proceed. There are some variances that were requested, but overall, it's a fantastic development. We can't wait to see the affordable housing units offered in town.
Great, thank you. Any further discussion? May I have a third reading, please?
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Brennan, that a bylaw to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw number 6080-94 respecting lands described municipally as 188 Chambers Street be amended from light industrial special exception 2 M2-2 in brackets to residential type 4 special exception R4-X withholding provisions be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10356-2022.
Thank you. It is moved by Councillor Dwyer, seconded by Councillor Brennan. The bylaw to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw number 60-80-94, respecting lands described municipally as 188 Chambers Street from light industrial special exception 2 in brackets M2-2 to residential type 4 special exception in brackets R4-X withholding provision be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10356-2022. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Councillor McKenna, you have the next bylaw.
Yes, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Alford, that a bylaw to authorize an exception to bylaw 9997-2019, being a bylaw to appoint an acting mayor for each month of the current term of council, be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor McKenna, seconded by Councillor Alford. And a bylaw to authorize an exception to bylaw 9997-2019, being a bylaw to appoint an acting mayor for each month of the current term of council, be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? Carried. Discussion, Councillor McKenna?
As council has a very sophisticated and rigorous method of appointing our acting mayors each month. We use the alphabet and we go from A to the end of that. And it just so happens that 2 councillors would like to switch their month. And in order to make that happen, we need to have this exception to the bylaw.
Thank you. I assume there's no further comment. May I have a third reading, please?
Yes, that moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Alford, that a bylaw to authorize an exception to bylaw 9997-2019, being a bylaw to appoint an acting mayor for each month of the current term of council, be now read a third time, finally passed, signed, and sealed and numbered 10357-2022.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor McKenna, second by Councillor Alford, that a bylaw to authorize an exception to bylaw 9997-2019, being a bylaw to appoint an acting mayor for each month of the current term of council, be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10357-2022. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Now, Councillor Allen, you have our final bylaw. Oh, you're on mute, Councillor Allen.
Sorry. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McGuire, that a bylaw to delegate authority to the Director of Public Works respecting temporary parking provisions be received a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Allen, second by Councillor McGuire. The bylaw to delegate authority to the Director of Public Works respecting temporary parking provisions be received for the first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Discussion, Councillor Allen?
Yes, this is going to help us in terms of streamlining our approval for temporary parking provisions. And when we give this authority to Director McMunn, he will be able to accommodate things. And a good example of that is the one that is being brought forward now, where because of the Beckwith Street construction, it's very difficult for citizens to be able to get into or enter the town hall. And so 2 parking spaces are being put right in front of the side entrance that we're now using. And that will accommodate people coming and going more easily.
Thank you. Any further discussion? May I have a third reading, please?
Yes, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McGuire that a bylaw to delegate authority to the Director of Public Works respecting temporary parking provisions be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10358/2022.
Thank you. It is moved by Councillor Allen and seconded by Councillor McGuire. The bylaw to delegate authority to the Director of Public Works respecting temporary parking provisions be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10358/2022. All in favor? Thank you. That's carried. That's it for our bylaws. On to our first motion, Councillor McGuire.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Allen that the Council of the Town of Smith Falls resolve to recognize the properties known as 23 to 27 Beckwith Street North, 27 to 29 Beckwith Street North, 4 to 6 Main Street East, 8 to 12 Main Street East, 14 to 16 Main Street East, 21 Market Street North, 2 Russell Street East, 7 Russell Street West under Section 27 of the Ontario Heritage Act, RSO 1990, as amended, and place the properties listed and described at Appendix B of the Council Report 2022-086 on the Municipal Registry of Properties of Interest.
Thank you. And discussion, Councillor McGuire?
So yeah, this is some fruit from our Municipal Heritage Committee, especially thank you to Dorothy Hudson, Tony Humphreys, Jenny Davis, and Katie Hoffman for all the work that's gone into this. It prevents us from having to issue a demolition permit, I believe, within 30 days. It pushes it to 60 days. It doesn't offer meaningful protection for these properties, but it shows that we're doing our due diligence in documenting things. And the research completed for this will be very useful for the Heritage Conservation District study that will be coming down the pipes this year. So, yeah.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Thank you. It is moved by Councillor McGuire, seconded by Councillor Allen. The Council of the Town of Smith Falls resolved to recognize the properties known as 23 to 27 Beckwith Street North, 27 to 29 Beckwith Street North, 4 to 6 Main Street East, 8 to 12 Main Street East, 14 to 16 Main Street East, 21 Market Street North, 2 Russell Street East, 7 Russell Street West, under Section 27 of the Ontario Heritage Act, RSO 1990, as amended, and place the properties listed and described on Appendix B of Council Report 2022-086 on the Municipal Registry of Properties of Interest. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Councillor Alford, you're up next.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move by myself, seconded by Councillor Brennan. Whereas Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls adopted the street naming policy via bylaw 8668-2014, and whereas Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls approved the street name Rab Road for the new local street forming part of the Maple Ridge subdivision.
Thank you. Discussion, please.
Yes, Your Worship. Jack Rab was not only served in the Canadian military, but was one of our town's champions through several decades. And this honors Mr. Rab's contribution to Smith Falls in naming a street for him.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Yes, Councillor McGuire.
Thanks, Your Worship. I was wondering, I missed this debate a few weeks ago, unfortunately, but I was wondering why we're using road instead of street in this application.
Some staff can speak to that. CEO Morris?
Your worship, I would have to go back and speak with planning staff to understand the delineation between the two, but we can certainly circle back to confirm. I'm not aware from memory that there's any configuration or length or any defining features that would distinguish a street from a road. So I'll have to check with staff to find out why road was chosen as opposed to street.
Thank you. So based on that, and to CEO Morris or Deputy Clerk Bennett, you believe this is an item that should be deferred until we have that clarification?
If I might, Your Worship, I don't think it's time sensitive, so we can certainly get the information and bring it back in time for next week's special council meeting.
Okay. So an agreement from council, we will defer that item to next week. Okay. Item 8.3, Councillor McKenna.
Yes, Your Worship, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Brennan, that Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smiths Falls approve in principle the purchase of additional docks to support expanded tourism operations in Victoria Basin. And further, that that staff be directed to continue negotiations with LeBoat to develop a new docking agreement with lease terms that achieve full cost recovery for dock construction and installation.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Well, I think the motion is fairly self-evident, but LeBoat is expanding, as we discussed at the previous Cal meeting. They're adding new boats. We would like to, for lots of reasons, continue to invest in the LeBoat and in the larger tourism, boating tourism community. So these additional docks, when installed, would be available not just to LeBoat boats, but when they're not being used, the transient boater or others using the basin would be welcome to moor at them. And over the term of the agreement, which will be coming back to council with more details, under the terms of that agreement, council over the years will have that investment returned through LeBoat's agreements. So the money will come back from LeBoat. We're also pursuing a grant with the Ministry of Tourism to either pay all or some of the new docks going in. I think that about covers it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Yes, Councillor McGuire.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I think this, I know the support for LeBoat on our council is unanimous and tangible and very meaningful. That being said, we've gotten in trouble in past with approvals in principle. I'm thinking especially in relation to CIP funding applications. So the approval in principle makes me wary when the principles aren't well defined and there's a lot of unknowns, especially going into what defines full cost recovery, what there's the HST that wouldn't be covered by the grant, and furthermore that in all likelihood this agreement will be signed with the future council. So at this time I'm not comfortable with the approval in principle. So for that reason I'll be voting against it.
Okay. Any further? Councillor Brennan?
Yeah, in that vein of light, I think we should have a recorded vote.
Thank you. It is moved by Councillor McKenna, seconded by Councillor Brennan. The Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smiths Falls approve in principle the purchase of additional docks to support expanded tourism operations in Victoria Basin. And further, that staff be directed to continue negotiations with LeBoat to develop a new docking agreement with lease terms that achieve full cost recovery for dock construction and installation. And a recorded vote has been requested.
With respect to the LeBoat docking resolution, please state yay or nay. Councillor Alford,
Yay.
Councillor Allen,
Yay.
Counselor Brennan,
Yay.
Counselor Dwyer,
Nay.
Counselor McGuire,
Nay.
Counselor McKenna,
Yay.
Mayor Panko.
Yay.
This motion is carried.
Thank you. And our final motion of the evening is with Councillor Alford, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McKenna that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls authorize staff to prepare and submit a proposal to donate town-owned land at Highland Park to Rideau Community Health Services in response to their expression of interest seeking land for the development of an integrated health and social services hub in the town of Smith Falls.
Thank you. Discussion, please.
We discussed this at the Committee of the Whole just ahead of time, and for many reasons, the needs of our community can be better served with having this particular, if we were successful, having this at the location of Highland Park. It newly energizes that neighborhood, provides assistance and support for all of our town. And it will also be partnered or neighbor to the new newly built play area for the children of that neighborhood to enjoy, as well as it itself will have some community space available in it as well.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
No, but I think, I think we should have a recorded vote on this, but for different reasons than
Okay,
previous. And sorry, McKenna, to interrupt.
that's okay. Thank you. Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to say that this hasn't come up before, but there's probably 8 to 10 organizations going to come together in one location. These are hundreds of good paying jobs in the heart of our community. These are good, very good, long-term sustainable jobs. So I just wanted to stress that we didn't talk about the economic spin-offs of this, but they're plentiful. So I'm delighted to be having this on our agenda and hopefully supporting it tonight.
Thank you. Okay. Moved by Councillor Alford, second by Councillor McKenna, the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls authorize staff to prepare and submit a proposal to donate town-owned lands at Highland Park to Rideau Community Health Services in response to their expression of interest seeking land for the development of an integrated health and social services hub in the town of Smith Falls. And once again, a recorded vote has been requested. Deputy Clerk Bennett.
With respect to the miscellaneous motion for Rideau Community Health Services expression of interest, please state yay or nay. Counselor Alford,
Yay.
Counselor Allen,
Yay.
Counselor Brennan,
Yay.
Counselor Dwyer,
Yay.
Counselor McGuire,
Yay.
Counselor McKenna,
Yay.
Mayor Panko.
Yay.
This motion is carried.
Thank you. So that ends our official business. We have inquiries and announcements. I think, yeah, Councillor Alford, you are up first with.
I do, and it's a requirement with regard to a piece of business that I think council should undertake in this term. And that's to review the existing committees of council and appointees to other bodies that we currently have in place. It would be valuable to undertake this review of the committees and their terms of reference to ensure that they are still relevant and productive. Also, it would help to assist the next incoming council to have, we have 4 years of experience now of wisdom to share when it comes to the committees and appointees. I think what's become apparent, increasingly apparent over our term, is how important these committees are to the decisions that council makes and the advice that they give. So if my colleagues agree, I would ask staff who will also have opinions, because most of them either support or are on these committees as well, So I would like to see that we, if my colleagues agree, that we ask staff to undertake an analysis and perhaps recommendations for this council.
Councillor Dwyer, you had a comment?
Yeah, point of order, Mr. Chair. I believe this should be done through a notice of motion. So perhaps the councillor can convene with the deputy clerk and bring forward a proper notice of motion that council can consider and respond to.
Yeah, more formally, I would do that, but this just gives you the heads up. Thank you.
Deputy Clerk Bennett?
Certainly, I was going to recommend that this be added to next week's committee of the whole meeting. And we could have Councillor Alford speak to it there.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you. Other inquiries or announcements? Councillor McKenna, I think you have some wisdom to share.
Well, I just was doing some reading and discovered that we have another wonderful anniversary in the town of Smiths Falls. This year is the 125th anniversary of what? A pretty important thing, which we talked about tonight.
The hospital.
No.
It's not
In
the fountain.
1897, we opened Victoria Park, 125 years ago. And so well done to those people. It was it was used as a pasture for animals, and the local people said, this is too nice a piece of real estate. And so they petitioned Parks Canada and the municipality, and there we have it. It's essentially almost identical to what they started with. It hasn't changed. I mean, it's more beautiful, but so it is the 125th. I don't know what time of the year it opened, but thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McGuire, something to add? Nope. Okay. Councillor Allen, you have the motion for adjournment.
Yes, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McGuire that this council adjourn its proceedings at 6:25 and stand so adjourned until the next duly called meeting of council.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Allen, seconded by Councillor McGuire. This council adjourns proceedings at 6:25 p.m. and stands so adjourned until the next duly called meeting of council. All in favor?